All right, welcome back to another episode of Designing the Best You. As always, before we get started, I encourage you, if this resonates with you, anything in the episode, please share it with other people. Remember, we're part of a community, so go ahead and jump into the show notes and sign up for our newsletter, or you can message me on any platform and I'll be happy to add you in. It's really important to stay connected. It's really important to understand these connections that we're going through on this season between our career, our health, our life, things like that, that people are not talking about as much. So let's dive in. Today, we're going to be talking about Hashimoto's specifically because it's Thyroid Awareness Month and it's towards the end here, but Hashimoto's and your career. And Hashimoto's, yes, is a specific autoimmune condition that relates to thyroid. So it's going to encompass a lot of the thyroid stuff and any other really chronic illness we can apply these principles to in the workplace. So we all know that holding a job and building a career is more complicated and more competitive than ever, right? Especially with all this online space now, it's like everyone has access to all this information, right? And that's true for healthy people, let alone anyone who's dealing with a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease. That makes it just even more difficult to thrive in your career. And those of you who are dealing with those type of things, you completely understand. And too often, what happens, what I found over the years in my personal experience and my professional experience with clients, is that these chronic illnesses and autoimmune conditions lead to marginalization, underemployment, and even unemployment. But it doesn't have to be the case anymore. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about is my work is dedicated to giving you guys the tools to manage your career, to create more balance, to take those challenges that come across our lines and meet them with resilience, and to look to the future with hope. Why? Because I've been there. I know it's so incredibly difficult to focus when you've got brain fog, when you've got joint pain, when you're so exhausted. You can't remember, like, did I take my medication and my supplements? Was it at the right time? They all they look the same in my pill backs. I don't remember. Let me go count them. Or wait, I'm already at work. Crap. Oh, should I take another one in my emergency case in my purse or not? Did I eat the right foods? Why do I feel so tired again? I mean, part of it's being a woman, right? But on the other hand, when you have these conditions, there's so much going on. Okay. And here's the thing I want to tell you is you have the gifts, you have the skills, you have the talents, you have the competencies. You're incredibly intelligent, you're smart, and you like to work. Yes, there are people out there, they like to work. You want to bring home a sufficient income for your family, want to provide, right? But these chronic and debilitating symptoms from your Hashimoto's, or perhaps a set of mysterious symptoms, you're like, I don't even know why. Vanessa, I don't have a chronic illness. I don't have an autoimmune condition, but I've got these symptoms that just keep coming up. Um, what happens is they're getting in the way. And naturally, you're scared, right? You're like, I'm going to lose my freaking job. If I don't perform, like I'll deal with being exhausted. I'll deal with having this pain, but I can't lose my job, right? So do these sound like you? Have you ever said these things to yourself? Like, I want to continue working, but my performance is slipping. And if I continue this way, I might lose my job, my health, or shit, both. Or I'm currently unemployed and I want to get back in the workplace, but these debilitating and just unpredictable symptoms that keep coming up makes it so difficult. I can't be consistent. It might be even impossible. I'll just be at home and living off of whatever for the rest of my life. Okay. Now, you've probably looked for help online. Like I said earlier, there's tons of resources, there's tons of information. Everyone's an expert in everything, right? You've tried the easy fixes, right? The easy button, but it's not working. I don't work with easy, guys, especially because most of you guys are not dealing with easy stuff. Having a chronic illness, having debilitating symptoms that keep coming back, having autoimmune conditions, it is hard. It is hard. For example, like I have Hashimoto's. I didn't ask for it. It came upon my stressful life plus genetics, and it sucks some days. It really does. And it's difficult some days. Okay. So I want to share like a Cliff Notes version of my Hashimoto's journey, just so you can understand where I'm coming from and who you're listening to and dealing with. So I was diagnosed. I don't like that word, but we all understand it. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2017, right after our second son was born. He was born in April of 2017. Okay. And I thought, you've got to be freaking kidding me. How is this possible? I just got my Addison's disease. Now I'm going to put in quotes here Addison's disease to a state that was just manageable. Now, I put it in quotes there. If you're watching me online, you're just watching my fingers, and I'm telling you that it's in quotes, the Addison's disease. If you don't know my whole story, I want you to go back to season 3, the first couple of episodes, and I share my whole journey about what really happened with that condition. Another stress situation, okay? But during my second pregnancy with this child that was born in 2017, I had all these food issues. I couldn't I was had stomach pain and all the things from gluten, eggs, corn, soy, dairy, all fruit except for berries, almonds, coconuts, walnuts, and oats. And I was like, what in the world do I freaking eat now? Like, really? I can't have just meat all day because that'll make you constipated and all the things, right? That you're not going to get all the things you need from that. I can't just live off berries. Are you kidding me? What can I have for breakfast? I can't have like oats and eggs and eggs and avocado toast and all that. I could have avocado at that time. But I was like, what do I eat? And now my naturopath at the time, she's like, okay, here's your test results. Everything but your TPO antibodies, which is the marker basically for Hashimoto's, was off the charts. That was the only one that was off the charts. Okay. Now for a normal person, um, the Hashimoto's, the TPO antibodies, and I'm not saying it's the only marker, but it is like the hallmark marker saying, yeah, you got it. A normal person, what we call normal, again, I don't like that word, but should not be above 30. Mine were at 420. Eeks, right? So I asked my naturopath at the time, like, what do I do? She's like, well, she goes, now this is, well, I found out years later I had Hashimoto. So she kind of knew what was going on, but not really, because she had just been recently diagnosed too. Go figure. She goes, first of all, you have to stop eating all the foods you're sensitive to. I'm like, awesome. And we're going to put you on a compound T3, T4 medication. And I'm like, but you said my antibodies were off. Like, what do I do for that? She's like, well, they're in range, but we want to be, what did she say? It was basically prepping for the worst. And I'm like, okay, so I didn't understand the time because I didn't know anything about, I shouldn't say anything, but I didn't know what I know now in terms of functional diagnostics and how the body just all integrates together. No idea, right? But I didn't know what she said after that. After she's like said the food and the compound medication, I'm like, but something didn't feel right. But I was like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a practitioner. I just have my life experience and what I'm feeling. I'm not going to question her. She knows what she's doing. That's why she's my practitioner. So at the time of having the 2 young boys, now my oldest was about a year and a half, and the other one was obviously an infant. I was successfully running my resume writing business, or I thought. But I remember being so incredibly exhausted. And I was like, this can't be how every mom is. This just can't. They're all sleeping pretty much through the nights. The oldest one or the youngest one, we wake up and we'd take turns like swinging him in the car seat. He was a movement baby and he didn't eat the best, but he's still, I don't know, he was crabby all the time. He still is, but I love him dearly. And it felt normal. The other one, the oldest one, slept through the night since he was like 4 months old, so it wasn't a big deal. He was fine. He was self-sufficient, basically. And I say self-sufficient because he knew I'm not gonna go into is what it is. Okay, anyways. So, but I remember asking, oh, and then also I want to go back to like when I remember back to my corporate days, I was high strung all the time, every dang day. And then like weeks after that, I would crash. And so just like going back, I was like, all right, that was my normal, but it still didn't set well with me. Like it shouldn't be that way, right? And I remember when I was first diagnosed with Addison's disease in 2007. Um, for some reason, I think I'd read somewhere or heard someone say something. Now, it was a very rare condition, even like thyroid and Hashimoto's and all that type of stuff, like, were not, I don't wanna say non-existent, but they didn't ramp up until probably the last decade here. But I remember asking to have my thyroid levels checked, and the doctor at the time was like, "You have nothing to worry about. They're not connected. I just need more sleep. You gotta rest your system." And I'm like, okay, I'll just keep working. That's what my parents said to do, and they they seem to be doing just fine. And I'd actually just found out too at when I was diagnosed with my Addison's disease that my dad had it too. I was like, well, okay. I mean, he works and he deals with it. If all he has to do is X, Y, Z, then all right. And now I have Hashimoto's. Okay, it's I guess a part of it. Or now that when I was going back into the 2017, I was like, all right, well, it's normal, I guess, to have another autoimmune. Let's just keep pushing through I was told when I was younger, just keep pushing through, it'll make you stronger until you just don't have anything left. And after my naturopath in Arizona had diagnosed me with the Hashimoto's, she ran another lab for chronic conditions. We uncovered I had Epstein-Barr multiple times. Now these are like dormant conditions that they can go into remission and then they remain dormant until they're triggered and they can keep coming back. Okay, if you don't address them, you have no idea. All right. I had candida multiple times. I had C. diff, none of which were treated in any way, shape, or form. And then I asked my mom at the time, I said, do you remember me having any of these conditions? She's like, oh, yeah, when you were younger, you had a couple of those. The doctor said, but we decided not to do anything about it because I believed that the body's going to take care of itself. Now, do I believe that too? Yeah, but when you've got conditions like C. diff or you've got conditions like Epstein-Barr, like, you gotta address that stuff or candida, you gotta address that in some way, in forms of food, in forms of some supplementation there's so many different things, okay? But anyways, all that being said, just telling you that I went back to my day-to-day activities as I've been uncovering my own health journey and as I walk through patients' health journeys, and I'm like, that's why I take a full health history, like, I go back and I talk about jobs, I talk about all this stuff because it all matters, okay? I was worn down from the basic activities each day, both in corporate and then as a business owner with young children. And as many of you guys know, when you have chronic illnesses like Hashimoto's, Epstein-Barr, Candida, any of those things, as I said, they go in and out of remission via triggers. And so what remains a challenge is to stay focused and motivated and energized at work, whether you're working in corporate or whether you're working at home as a parent or as a work from home parent or whatever it is. Okay. So how do you overcome these obstacles of working, having a job, a career with chronic condition, especially the Hashimoto's or thyroid conditions? Like, what these are things that I ask clients, but like, what is the common obstacle that you're finding in the workplace when you have these conditions? And so I'm going to address these obstacles, and I'm also going to give you some tips to overcome some of them too. Okay. So I would say what strikes me among the hundreds of people I've worked with over the years is that communication is probably the number one issue. And you're going to be like, okay, yeah, duh. If you're any kind of relationship, a marriage, workplace, whatever, communication is a struggle. But I'm going to back it up in terms of the chronic illnesses. When you're living with physical, emotional, mental experience that no one can see unless you share it, right? We talk about a lot of our conditions like the Hashimoto's and Addison's disease, all that stuff. No one can see those conditions. It's not like you've gotten your arm cut off or your leg cut off or you've been born with, a spinal issue or like you're actually a physically disabled person, okay? It's an invisibly disabled, and I say disabled lightly because I teach people how to thrive with these conditions and they have, okay? But no one knows what you're going through unless you communicate it to them. And I'm not saying go blast it out to the world. I do that because I believe there's so many more opportunities for people to understand what they're dealing with and how to thrive in life with these conditions and sometimes even overcome and put them in remission, okay? But no one knows. And many people when they struggle with communication like, what should I say about my health? Who do I tell? And when do I tell them? We're like, do we wait till we get the job and then say, oh, yeah, by the way, do we tell them before we get the job? Right? We tend to feel like victims, like, oh my gosh, we're these tenacious, um, driven, highly motivated professionals. Wow, I shouldn't say that. It makes me weaker. And it doesn't. Okay. I'm telling you that now. It might feel like it at first. You might be nervous and all the things, but, and I will say that um, you might be treated differently. And if you are treated differently, I'm sorry, but you need to speak to HR and or find a new job because all of us are dealing with something. And if you have the guts to stand up and say something about your condition that will help you be more productive and effective at work and be a better asset to the company, kudos to you. That other people are not doing and struggling with behind closed doors, that's their problem. Okay. And if they're going to make fun of you for it, basically like playground bully you about it, um, then you need to leave that company or report it to HR. Okay. So I do recommend communicating it and telling your direct manager, HR, and a colleague. Now, I recommend telling a manager because what if they need to keep an eye out for you? Okay, what if you faint or you're having a situation or you break out in some manner and they're like, right? They need to be able to, what I call like protect you. Okay, stand up for you. HR, they're going to be able to address others people's complaints perhaps about your working condition. Maybe you have to work remote for a few days because it's a typically an in-office job, and they have to say like, hey, you know what, no, this person, we have authorized to do this because whatever, obviously keeping confidentiality in some manner, but they need to know how to protect you, right? And colleagues are people that you can trust on a daily basis, right? Maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I am so freaking tired today. I'm having a flare up. And can you cover for me in the meeting? I need to take a chill pill. Boss so and so knows, but I really need you to cover here because they're not going to be in there, right? Or hey, do you mind going to pick up lunch for me or whatever? Can you help get me out of the office for lunch and walk a little bit? Whatever. Okay, colleagues are always great. Okay, and again, make sure that there's someone that you can trust. Um, and another thing is knowing when and where the right time is to disclose the information is a key issue, but it's not to be avoided. Okay. So the disclosure aspect of it, when you're filling out a job application these days, there are voluntary disclosures, right? We've all seen them like, are you a military veteran? Do you have a disability? All those types of things. And they're all voluntary, right? There is a question they've added over the last few years of do you have, in part of the disability aspect, and it says includes like autoimmune conditions, like MS, like all the time. You can actually disclose that. And people are like, should I do that? Should I not? They can't disqualify you either way. They can't. And if they do, that is a massive issue, um, and whatnot. They can't do that. Okay. It's your choice. From personal experience, I would recommend disclosing that to HR. Now, again, your choice is to do it whether it's before or in the interview process or after. Um, if you haven't done it in the interview process, please, please, please do it after. Um, because if you have an episode or you forget to take medication that affects your personal well-being and or your job performance, at least HR and your manager should know. I mean, I remember personally, I was working through some of my conditions that I'd had with Addison's disease, or actually what it is HPA axis dysfunction from a lot of stress from childhood. But again, go listen to those episodes, like I said, in season 3. But I was learning to balance medication and supplements, and I was sitting in the morning meeting and I was shaking profusely. And I told my manager that morning, he's like, well, I did notice that you were struggling and I thought you had too much coffee or something. But once I explained it to him, he was not only able to understand, but protect me until I stabilized. Not only that day, but other days as we're like, okay, we should take this, should we not take this, and blah, blah. And I communicated to him. I was scared to death at first. I'll be honest with you. That was my early 20s. I was scared to death. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to affect my performance. I'm not going to be up for a raise. I'm not going to be up for like going to do different projects. I was going down that rabbit hole. Okay. But there's also situations you have to remember. Remember Hashimoto's thyroid conditions, a lot of autoimmune are exacerbated, if not started by stress. And so when we have things like family issues, I had a couple deaths during these times too, where, or we have, emotional issues that come up, relationship breakups, whatever it may be, different food situations. We have these flares. If we disclose these conditions, um, then people can, they actually have the opportunity to practice empathy with us. How cool. So we're actually helping other people with our conditions by disclosing them. Okay. And what I mean by the empathy is I think it's a missing piece, to be honest, in the workplace. It's not playing the victim card, like playing into the victim card, but it's truly recognizing that we care about others and what they could be potentially dealing with. And it might actually open up, and people say open up a can of worms, but it might actually open up for them an opportunity to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm actually dealing with X. Wow. And then we start to have empathy for each other and we start to look out for each other. And it builds a special bond in the workplace. Okay. Basically, it makes us better human beings. So, but I will stay to this point again of disclosing issues. This is the choice of each individual. Okay. Don't let anyone force you. If someone's like, I know you have, or I heard you have, you don't need to disclose it. Okay. But I will say it does help with your career. Okay. Discuss it with your spouse and family and friends, and do a pros and cons list before you present it to your manager and HR and be like, hey, you know what? Here. But my suggestion always is to not live in fear. If they are not going to accept you for something typically none of us ask for to be diagnosed with, then you need to find a new place of employment. Okay. And here's a cool thing too that a lot of you probably don't know. Employers actually want you to disclose. Okay. It's not for like a numbers game or anything like that, but it's because they're able to actually reallocate resources to support you as an employee or a job seeker. Okay. And if they don't know anyone in their population, like in that employee base that has an illness, they might have things like gym memberships, or they might have other things that they can tap into for employee benefits. But if you don't say anything, they can't use those benefits that have been given to them to offer to employees as well. Okay. And they could also be using resources. They could allocate resources towards mental health stipends or better healthcare options. They can talk to you like, hey, this healthcare plan is actually a better one suited for you than the one that you're on right now because of X, Y, and Z. So that disclosure in the long run can absolutely benefit you as an employee. But again, it's your choice on when and how to do it. But I really do encourage you as a job seeker, as a current employee, to do it. Okay. Because if you ask from the beginning and you disclose, you're actually you're better off getting those resources, and your employer, here's the key thing too, legally has to support you. Does that make sense? All right. So another really, really big obstacle that I notice clients getting um, basically caught up in, because a lot of you that are listening are really driven and hardcore executives and whatnot, is we get caught up in the hustle culture. And what I mean by hustle culture is we got to work more hours to do more than our coworkers to get ahead. We have to be working at home on that special project because we're not getting time in the office to do it. And if I finish this project and I do it well, I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to get the raise. I'm going to get whatever. Okay. Come on. You all have been there. You've all thought it. You've all been in it. Okay. I know it. All right. Just recently I was talking to a client and she told me she actually had to take a step back and reevaluate what that type of like hustle culture was doing to her health. And so that brought up a really good conversation in one of our calls about us learning how to work on setting boundaries with her boss. Okay. And this is something I'm going to be doing a whole segment on and stuff. But there was a time that she had said during that time that we talked that her boss had asked her to work 10-hour days. And she turned it down because her Hashimoto's and recent flare ups, he kept pushing her. Okay. He kept pushing her. And we all know if you have Hashimoto's, you're like, man, you get to a point, you're like, I'm toast. Like I said earlier, I was working, working, working. I would take then time off and then be like, oh, okay, this is how it goes. I work, 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 and take days off. Okay, cool. But I would crash on those days off. Okay. And that's what was happening to her. She'd be like working, working. She's like, Vanessa, I'm waking up. I'm so tired. I don't know how I get to work each day. Okay. And some of you have been there. Like, how did I get here? I mean, I know how I got here, but like, how did I get here today? Um, but he kept pushing her and saying, if you don't want to work 10-hour days, well, guess what? Then you can work on Saturdays. I was shocked when she said this, but I wasn't at the same time because I understood like how her boss was and the company was at that time. But I said, all right, we're gonna give him a script. She's like, Vanessa, I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna get voted. I'm whatever. I'm not gonna be up for promotion. I'm gonna like all this stuff. I said, all right, I know that is a very valid fear. Okay. I said, but we're going to give a script. And we also created a plan in the background saying, hey, you know what? If you do get fired or you do, he does report you or whatever it is, we have a plan of action. And that's what I do with my clients. I say, hey, we're going to give you the opportunity to be bold and courageous and take a stand for yourself and your health. And then we're also going to have a plan. Okay. And so we wrote her a script basically saying, like, hey, this extra couple hours a day is really going to take a toll on my physical health, my mental health, and also the work that I'm doing for you. And I know based on what I've done in the past, if I stay within my 40-hour week, I'm going to be able to give you my best work. But if you stretch me too far, I'm not going to be able to provide you with that. Now, conversations like that are very awkward. They're very uncomfortable, but we have to practice it. Okay. And it brought up an opportunity for her to say, and this was so cool because she actually came up with this. And this is, I've helped some clients with this, but she actually came up with this on her own. She said, maybe I can actually help you streamline the processes so none of us have to work overtime. Because we all know if you're an employer or if you're, an executive, working overtime costs us money, costs us extra money. It's not just giving someone their regular per hour, it's time and a half or double time, right? And so we have that too. That's a cost to the company. So if we can help streamline processes, then no one has to work overtime. So even though this client was really afraid that it was going to reflect poorly on her not taking those extra hours or working Saturdays, it gave her an opportunity to use her skills to help with that issue in a different way. Pretty cool, huh? So those are the kind of things that we work on together with clients. But next, I want to talk to you about having what I call a warrior, again in quotes, warrior spirit with like at work with your debilitating symptoms or conditions. Okay. Now, I do want to basically put it out there saying, if you have debilitating symptoms, I don't want you to force yourself to go to work. Okay. If you have something that you're having a flare up, like call in sick, give me a call, send me a message, whatever, and let's work through some of that stuff instead of forcing yourself to work just because you're like, oh my gosh, I can't take time off or I have a project or whatever. But now, what I want to say with a warrior spirit, I don't want you to think that having your condition or your symptoms should be a constant battle. Okay. Any of you who are Christian out there, our battle's already been won. Okay. But let's face it, living with an illness presents challenges that none of us are prepared for. It's kind of like going home with a baby. You're like, there's no freaking manual, there's no guidebooks. And the most difficult aspect of this is the unpredictability, right? The not knowing, right? Not knowing with your illness, not knowing with a baby, right? That's when the why, the what, whatever, like when you can create this inner peace, this like stillness finally, right? Now, the internal peace, that's what I call the war. Okay. Because when you're fighting yourself, and I say fighting yourself, and those of you with autoimmune diseases, you're like, yeah, myself is fighting myself. But I'm talking about like your soul, your mind, your emotions. When you're fighting yourself, okay, this gives you a new strength that you need. And I say you need this new strength because a lot of us have been fighting just in that fight or flight hypervigilance type thing. Like okay, I just got to do what I got to do to survive. Okay. This is a new kind of strength because you have faith now as you're fighting, right? As you're living with your illness, right? There's no training manual, there's no guidebook. Okay. You have the faith in your ability to face and deal effectively with that unpredictable, right? And it's your faith, that faith in your God given ability to address whatever comes up. Okay. That's what I work on a lot with clients because when we have that faith, it gives us courage, it gives us boldness, and it helps us manage the stress, lowers that stress level, and helps us with manage our situations, our conditions. Okay. So there's a second part of what I call that warrior spirits. And that's in the uncharted territory. Like I said, there's no guidebooks, there's no playbook, there's no, hey, this person with Hashimoto's with this type of job did XYZ, right? I mean, there kind of is with the condition, but each person has different environments, different homes they grew up in, different morals, different values, all different types of things that they've experienced, different foods they're sensitive to, all these different things. Okay. So not only do you need to have faith in yourself and your ability to effectively manage the unpredictable that's going to happen in the workplace, it's going to happen at home, it's going to happen with your body, okay? But you need to learn to move through life with intention because there's so many things we can't control. I will raise my hand to being the queen of freaking out over things that I can't control. A person, a situation, a body situation, whatever, like, "Oh my gosh," right? I will be the first to admit that. I am human. I live through what you guys have lived through, okay? I lived through it, okay? And that's why I always tell people, I'm like, "Why are you gonna go to a doctor who doesn't have your condition? Why are you gonna work with someone or level up your career who hasn't done that? They've just read books or blogs or things online or just followed someone else online, okay? No. All right, you work with someone who's been through it or going through it. Because if you think about it in the end, like there is no I've won this race until you're dead. Okay. Got it? All right. So, but here's the thing. Where you can take charge, that's when you can set achievable goals. And achievable is the word. Okay. When we live with these conditions, when we live with these symptoms, when we deal with whatever we're dealing with, when you're a single parent, when you're dealing with marriage issues, when you're dealing with a struggling kid or whatever it is, this is the thing. You set achievable goals for you and them. Okay. And that purpose actually motivates you to keep going on those tough days because you can tie those goals to a meaningful purpose. Okay. And when you have those days that are just, they seem like they're unbearable, you're like counting down the minutes on the clock. You're like, I just need to get home. I just got to get home and then I'll be okay. And then maybe you get home, you're like, I just got to get the kids to bed, whatever it is. Okay. When your flares are triggered, when you're dealing with rough symptoms, when you're all those type of things, when you have an achievable goal and you tie it to a meaningful purpose, that keeps you going. All right. It keeps you going. All right. And then you can actually work from that place of a new strength because you recognize what your limits are. You say to Boss Billy over here, you say, okay, I've got a flare up with my Hashimoto's. I'm doing everything I can. I know that I do have to go home and get rest now. I do. I can't lay on the floor here at work or I can't continue to be on calls because I can't focus. I'm going to take off the next couple hours and I'm going to come back tomorrow better. You understand your capacity. And finally, to actually identify obstacles, right? It's a key part to all of this. Like what can get in your way? You have to create a plan for yourself because planning when you have these conditions is key. You can't just go willy nilly, right? You got to have extra stuff in your purse or at your desk. You got to have foods around that you can eat. I keep foods that I can eat in my car that last pretty much most of the seasons. I have food in my desk. I have the food at home hidden so the kids don't eat them. I got to have that stuff. You have these plans. Hey, when I'm having this kind of day and I have to cancel a meeting, this is what I'm going to say. Okay. I know it sounds like it's simple, but it's hard. Okay. But the final thing I want to talk about, since again we are ending Thyroid Awareness Month, is advice for thyroid clients for balancing your health with these conditions and your work life. So I have found that over the years, being successful with any kind of condition or symptom or situations, hard situation at home is having a routine at work. And I know that sounds strange, but maybe not. I don't know. But I found if you take care of yourself while you're at work, you still have the energy to put into things you actually want to do in your personal life afterwards. And one of those things that I definitely recommend to clients is meal planning. Nourishing food is incredibly important for anyone with thyroid conditions. Following something like a paleo type diet, modified to your food intolerances, is absolutely imperative because those of you with thyroid conditions, you have gluten and you're going to be in this brain fog, gut issue, terrible kind of day. Okay. And like many of you, you're incredibly talented at work. So taking energy out of weekly meals, like what am I gonna have for dinner? Oh, did I put that out? Oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. If you have it planned out, there goes extra energy that you're using to put towards that, then you can put it towards your work. Okay. On a side note, take a lunch break, get away from your desk, get away from the stress, walk outside if you can, get out in the sun, get out even in the clouds outside if possible. If not, walk your building, go up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs, down the stairs, put some headphones in, whatever. Okay, take the stress out. Okay. And I also recommend, especially if you sit a lot, set a timer on your phone or on your computer to get up and move. Okay. Movement and proper nutrition really help with fatigue and brain fog. Okay. And another huge tip, because Hashimoto's and flares and recovery, Hashimoto flares and recovery basically are directly linked to stress. Please set boundaries with your coworkers, especially if you're a manager. Okay, a lot of times you have employees that walk in your office and they gossip, or if a colleague comes in and gossips, make them where you don't want them coming in your office gossiping because you only have so much energy, and that does tend to suck a lot of energy out of people, especially when you're in a toxic environment. Again, can be an awkward conversation, but I suggest saying, "Hey, that sounds really frustrated what you're speaking about, but I've resolved to stay positive in the workplace. So if you want to talk about how we can productively deal with this, I'm open to that." They usually walk away. Okay, they really do. And that relieves so much stress. So finally, one thing that has helped myself and others in the office environment, and you can't see it because it's behind my computer here, but to get a day lamp for your desk. When you struggle with like headaches and brain fog and stuff like that, and you're in an adult office all day, they're like 25 bucks on Amazon. Those fluorescent lights that are above us most of the time kills our eyes and it hurts our heads. Okay. So I focus on rest, diet, movement, and stress management and practice. And all of those affect our productivity in the workplace and in our homes. And if we don't have those in order per se, we're going to struggle, whether we have a chronic condition or not. Okay. Which is why I always have customized protocols for individuals that allows us to explore and see the situation from a different perspective. Working with myself, someone who understands, like I said, your challenges, right? I live with it myself. I've worked with hundreds of people like you, allows you to develop the competencies you need to thrive, not just survive in the workplace. And that's my goal. We need to use your skills, right? We need people like you to use your skills in the workplace to better our communities, homes, and country. God help us all. Okay. So if you need more clarity, you want to figure out what your body's telling you through all of this, whether you're like, hey, Vennessa, you have Hashimoto's, I do too. Maybe I just got diagnosed, or my current practitioner is like kind of all over the place. I don't really understand, whatever it may be. Please get on a free call with me so I can help you not spend all the time and energy and effort and money that I have for the past 15, 20 years. Okay. And let's get right down to it of how to take control of your own health. The links are going to be in the show notes. As always, don't wait. And until next time, let's keep uncovering the root cause of your symptoms and design the best you that this world so desperately needs.